Welcome to this Eloquent Systems webinar on archival hierarchies. My name is Maria Robinson and I'm a consultant here at Eloquent Systems. Today we're going to be talking about organizing your archival collections into hierarchical structures. If you're coming to Eloquent Archives with nothing but an inventory list of your holdings, then this is the webinar for you, because we're going to cover the basic rules of archival arrangement and help you build a hierarchy for your records. The Eloquent software makes it easy to create different levels of description and link them together into a tree. Descriptive standards assume a hierarchical structure of records, so once you're done, you'll be in a position to follow them. I'll start by going over the idea of a hierarchy and why it's useful, and then move into a discussion of archival arrangement, then description, and then proceed to a demonstration. A hierarchy. Context is central to understanding archival materials and central to organizing them. A file is just a file, and a photo is just a photo, unless it has other files and other photos to help you understand its significance. The more files and photos you have, the better picture you can glean of who created it, why did they create it, how was it used, and what did it mean. This is what archival research is all about. So here's a visual example of an archival hierarchy. You have your top level, which is varyingly called things like a file or a collection, record group, or manuscript group. Whatever you call it, this is the entity that was responsible for creating this set of records. For example, the Salman Rushdie papers, or the Department of the Interior record group. It's possible you'll need some sous-fonds or subgroups to further break down your top-level entity. For example, the Department of the Interior breaks down into the Geological Survey, the Office of Indian Affairs, and the Office of the Commissioner of Railroads, among others. So these are smaller record-creating entities. Alternatively, you could make each of these a top-level record group on their own, which is actually what the National Archives and Records Administration in the U.S. has done. So each top or sub-top level breaks down next into series. Series are meant to represent activities. These might be as broad as correspondence, or subject files, or scrapbooks. They might be more specific, depending on the volume of papers you have. So, for another example, the U.S. Geological Survey record group breaks down into over 600 series. They're quite big and they've been around for a while. So these include things like the boundary information map files, control notebooks, portraits of agency personnel, and water resources investigations reports. If necessary, your series can then break down into subseries. But remember that you can't have a subseries without a series, or a sub-anything really without the anything. Those major levels come first, and then if you need to break them down into subs, you can do that. So series break down into files. Files are the individual file folders that the records live in. So in offices, these are often either done by year, or maybe they're left open until full. If you're receiving records from a corporate body of some sort, then the records will come to you in labeled file folders. Likely, anyway. And if you're receiving records from a private donor, well, this might not be the case. It depends on how this person was maintaining their own records. You might be provided with a box full of loose paper, in which case it's up to you to organize it into files and series. Files are often the lowest level described, if only because it would be impossible to take the time to catalog each and every piece of paper in an archives. So items then are often only described if they're important enough to note or distinct enough from each other in one way or another to warrant the separate descriptions. Many archives will do item-level descriptions for photographs, slides, pieces of art, and other artifacts, but it's not often you're going to find individual documents described. And also note, nowhere in here did I say box. Boxes are not a level of description. They are not a type of arrangement. They are a location. And we'll talk more about physical versus intellectual arrangement later. But let's talk about arrangement generally first. I mentioned that if you're processing records from a corporate body, odds are that the records are already nicely arranged into series of nicely labeled file folders, especially if this office is adhering to some kind of records classification scheme. There's very little to do here except pull out the already existing file structure. It's possible your private donor has also kept neatly arranged files, but sometimes this isn't the case at all. Let's talk about some principles of archival theory. I'll try not to get too academic on you. The first thing to keep in mind is proceeding from the general to the specific. So you start with the whole of your records first. You need to demarcate your full collection or record group. So think in terms of a record-creating entity. The entity is the person, persons, or corporate or government body that produced the records. Everything they created, everything in their domain is your full, and they are your creator. So from the whole, then analyze the records and start figuring out what activities produced them. These are going to be your series. A good starting place for corporate records is that organization's mandates. What are their responsibilities? For a private individual, look at the activities they participated in. But remember that this organization is proceeding from an analysis of the actual records in front of you. Your donor may have been very heavily involved in some activity, but if there aren't any records to reflect that, you're not going to be creating a series for it. It's likely you already have file folders, but if not, you're going to need to work through the papers in each series and try to recompile them into an arrangement in which they might have originally been created and used. Provenance is the principle that says you need to respect the creator by keeping a creator's records together, not separating them, and not mixing them with those of another. This is also known as respect to full. You'll keep this principle in mind when demarcating your full collection or record group. So that is when you're deciding what is the whole of my records. Are these all the records that were created by this particular person and not by that person? The principle of original order is most precious. This means maintaining respect for the order in which the creator maintained its records. The charge of an archive is to preserve history. Preservation means being objective and maintaining a creator's records exactly as they were as evidence of their activities. So by breaking up the original order and rearranging the records, you're breaking that trust. In records where there is no original order, or it's long since been lost, you have the responsibility to try to reconstruct that order. Don't make it what you think it should be, though, but rather make it what you think it likely was. Let's turn to description. Once you have the records arranged, the next step is to record this arrangement in your database. So again, it's best practice to start at the top. Your description, like arrangement, should proceed from the general to the specific, because the information you put at the upper levels is relevant to all of the levels below. It's common to have great long descriptions at the upper levels and then become more sparse at the file and item level, because everything's already been said. Your descriptive records ought to mimic the arrangement. So whatever record group, series, files, and items you've decided upon, you need to describe each of those in a separate record. We'll start with the full collection or record group record. This is the level where you need to be sure to thoroughly describe your creator. You can just take a look on this one form in front of you too. You see there is no forms part of field. This one is empty because this is the uppermost level. You have a title for this group, you have your dates, and you have the level of description noted with this drop-down menu. And here's the creator link. Under the name of creator and under biographical sketch or administrative history. So whatever bio sketch and admin history you put in the creator's authority record is going to be dragged in on the full record when you see it on the public display. So Eloquent requires you to create an authority record for each of your creators. And you're going to link to this authority record from your collection record. So on the authority record is where you will detail the administrative history and the biographical sketch of this person or the corporate body. And this step is very important in providing context to your set of records, because without knowing the who, it can be harder to make sense of the what and determine the why. So you can also include things on here like non-preferred names, meaning like nicknames, or common misspellings, and also some dates, some see also notes, see also meaning see other authority records that are similar to this one, or related in some way or another, and some source notes for where you got the information. After you do your top level, you want to move down and start working on your series level descriptions. You're going to link each series to its full collection or record group by using that forms part of field up there at the top. That's how you make the link. So you enter the upper level here to form that relationship. So again, you'll see here we've got the title filled out, we've got some dates, and the level of description is now number 2 for series. So the scope and content notes at this level should be quite beefy. The series represents an activity, so there should be a lot to say here about what this activity was, who was involved, what sorts of records it produced, and how they were used and arranged. If at any time you find these fields a little hard to work in, just click that edit button and you can work with these paragraphs in a larger view. Files don't usually require much detail, so you might want to use our batch forms using Eloquent Spreadsheet at this level. You simply select your series as the higher level up here in the Forms part of field, and then list off all of your folder titles and dates. Now note that you don't link your files to the collection or that upper highest record group level here, because by virtue of being linked to the series, and the series is linked to the full, so the files are now part of that hierarchical chain that leads all the way back up to the top. The other thing you can do here is if you do decide you need to describe these in a little more detail, add in some scope and content notes or maybe some restrictions, after you push save on any one of these spreadsheet forms, a new button appears up here at the top called Single. If you press that single button, it'll take these descriptions and you directly into the single entry web forms where you have the full set of fields to fill out. And if you do choose to describe down to the item level, you might also want to consider using these batch forms too. We have particular batch forms for photographs that allow you to attach digital images. If at any point during the description entry process you feel lost or unsure of what a particular field is for, remember to hover your mouse over the question mark help icon next to each field label. This will provide you with a pop-up excerpt from the Professional Descriptive Standard. And the last point I want to cover under arrangement and description is the difference between physical and intellectual control. So you've probably run into the fact that not every record that's part of a file, series, or full fits into the regular size file folder or into the regular size box. Sometimes certain records are so fragile that they require special treatment. So when it comes to storage, it is important to treat your records with care and with preservation in mind. So if this means physically separating out components of your collection, then by all means, do it. You are not destroying the original order, and you're not destroying the whole of the full. It's the intellectual arrangement that preserves these things. So by describing your series and files as they properly should be, you're recording the original arrangement and you're providing evidence of this record group as it was. One other note here, while it is easy to move whole units of records to different locations, meaning a file or a box, if you need a larger size box or a larger size file, for example, but if you do need to remove an item from a file, then be sure to include a note in its place with information on the new location. You're likely not describing your records at this level, so if you do move one document out of that file and put it somewhere else, it's probably going to be next to impossible to find its proper place again. And now it's time for a demo. I'm going to demo today two things for you. The first is creating a collection from scratch the right way, or the recommended way, the best practice way. And secondly, I will show you how to clean up a mess easily and insert some hierarchy levels to organize your records better. And I don't mean to imply to anyone out there, if you're looking at some of these examples and I'm calling them a mess, I don't mean to imply that you haven't done a good job or it's really awful organization. I don't want to offend you. I'm just generalizing a bit here so we can see the difference between better and worse. So let me log in as a senior archivist and we can get going. I'm going to use the ISADG forms. These ones are actually my favorite. And we're going to start with a full level description. So remember, as I said, when you're doing description, you start from the general and move to the specific. So that means we're going to start at the very top. And my example today is going to be the Eloquent Systems full. We started in 1975. and we're still going, so I'm going to leave that date open. My level of description is full. I don't really know the extent. I'm just going to put in some bare bones things today so we can see how this would work quickly. I don't want to keep you here all day. And remember how I said for the creator, we need to make a separate authority record. I can't just type in the name of the creator, and I can't just type in an administrative history. So I know I don't have one for Eloquent Systems, so I'm going to create one. If you haven't used these name authority forms, they're really pretty straightforward too, and I also have an entire webinar on creating name and subject authorities, so feel free to give us a call if you'd like some more information on that. So we've got our name, the authority type, corporate name. There was no superior body, there were no predecessor bodies. We do have a mnemonic, I'll put that in ESI. Administrative history. Remember Victor in 1975, ... and we'll pretend there are several long paragraphs there. Founded in 1975, there is no end date yet. See also scope notes, if we had any software company partners and we had authority records for them, that might be something good to put under the C also. And I'm actually going to put in our postal code here too, just so we can see the Google Maps mashup. I know that really doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about today, but I always like to show that off. So all I need to do is enter a postal code to make that happen. And when we do a public search later, I'll show you. And save. Okay, we'll do a quick scope and content here. This file contains records related to, yes, very quick. And remember, if I don't know what any of these are for, I can always hover over these arrows and get some excerpts directly from whichever standard I'm in. For example, these are from ISAG. Okay, I think that's good. Let's push save, and we'll move on and create a series level record. Okay, to start our series, the first thing we're going to do is make that link up to our phone level. So let's search for that and fill out this forms part of field. The next thing is the title, and I'm going to make our one series in here called Software Development. It's a pretty major activity that we do here. The dates, maybe we're missing the first few years of records. Pretend they got lost somewhere. Our level of description is a series. And remember, I don't need to fill in creator here because creator was already filled in at the phone level. Remember, I don't need to repeat anything as I move my way down because everything from the top is already implied. But I do need a good scope and content note. So this series contains records related to software development and so on and so forth. And I would fill that out in much more detail. And that's really all there is to do as far as bare bones go here. So let's push save again. So the next step is to do files. Now, if I only had one or two files and I had a lot of information on each of them, I could continue using these forms and just switch, level of description down to file, and the forms part of would be my series. But I have quite a few of them, and I don't have a whole lot of information about them. So I'm going to use our batch forms instead, using Eloquent Spreadsheet. First step, again, that forms part of. That's always the most important part, is to get that link right. Oops. So these form part of that software development series. I started to put in Eloquent, and that was not the right thing to do. I don't want to connect it to the full. I want to connect it to the series. Here we go. So now what I can do is start typing some things into the spreadsheet. Maybe the first one is, my first file is called Eloquent Records, maybe volume 1, and so on. And I also incidentally have done a webinar on using these batch forms. There's a lot you can do with them. They're very powerful. And so if you're interested in the details of that, also give us a call and we'll give you a copy of that webinar. So I'm going to skip over some of the details here. But what I am going to show you how to do, what you can do here, is use the Excel import. So I already have several files that belong in this series, and they're sitting in a spreadsheet. And it's going to be a whole lot easier if I can just import them in one go rather than having to type it all up again. So what this does is it gives me a preview of my spreadsheet over here on the right, and then over here on the left is where I match up the columns. So the title field, the Eloquent title field, matches my file title. Dates match dates, and number is going to match volume number. When I push go, it gets all of that into the form straight away for me. So that's really easy. And then I can push save. So if I wanted to go on and move on to those single entry forms, I can do that here pushing the save button, or I can bring them back into the spreadsheet using the read button and maybe make some edits. Maybe I made a mistake and I can fix that up. But for now, I'm not going to bother entering any items either, so I think we're done with this one. But let's go and take a look on the public side, just so you can see what we've created. This one is called the Eloquent Systems Fall. Yeah, and here we go. So it consists of one series, which consists of 8 files. And look at that. Okay. So this looks pretty nice though, doesn't it? We've got a file, or a series and a file. These should probably be items and not files, but we'll pretend that we didn't see that. But this is what I wanted to show you, is that Google Maps mashup, which comes in as part of the authority record. So this is really neat, because then you can see this is Eloquent Systems. This is our information. We were founded by Merv Richter in 1975. And look, this is where we're located. I really like that. So I encourage you to, if you have your postal code or zip code, you should really put that into your authority records. But it's time to take a look at a mess, so we can fix one up instead. We've seen what a nice looking one looks like. And granted, it was a pretty simple one, and I know things get more complicated, and it can be really hard to make something fit quite the way you want it to. But that is how it goes sometimes. So all you can do is the best you can. There we go. I just want to see the top level. That was just too much. Okay, so we're going to start at the top, and then we're going to open this and see what it looks like. So there could be a couple of different reasons you're in this situation where things aren't as nice and neat and hierarchical as you would like them to be. One is maybe you made a mistake in the data entry and you selected the wrong parent level. Instead of making your hierarchical chain all the way back up, you just put everything directly under the full or the collection. Two, this might actually be on purpose. Maybe you're coming into Eloquent with just a bunch of file inventory lists. So it's a very flat structure, and everything would have just gotten dumped under the top level. But it's really easy to fix this, and that's really what I want to show you, is that whether it was a mistake or whether it's on purpose, this is your situation, everything is salvageable and really easy to deal with. So you don't need to be afraid of it. So this is what we've got here. We have our full, and I have a file, and I can see that my file has some stuff underneath it. That's good. But I have a bunch of items that are right underneath my top level, and that doesn't seem right. If I scroll down further, I see I have a series. A series should definitely fall underneath the full. That's good. And my series has a file, and that's also good. So there's a couple of things to fix up then. One is to take this file and move it under the series with the other file, and then we'll have to fix up all of these items. But I think the easiest thing to do first is to move that file around. So let's get rid of this for a moment and head back to our back end. I'm going to use a single entry form, and I'm going to pull up that one we had a problem with using our keyword search down on the bottom. Actually, let me bring it back again so I can remember what it was. A really great thing you can do here is just copy and paste these. I know this is the troublesome one. We're going to copy it, paste it down here in our keyword search. There we go. And here's our problem. The forms part of should be a series, not a full. So let's find that series and reconnect it. And push save. Excellent. Let's close this and let's do another search here. See if it's starting to look a little bit better. Okay, well, our file has been moved underneath the series, so that's good. We now have a series with 2 files. So our remaining problem is all of these items here. So what are we going to do? This is where you need to start taking a look at these items. I mean, if you don't already know where they go, maybe you did have a flat inventory, you've already worked things out in a spreadsheet of where things should fit. But if you haven't done that yet, you're going to need to take a look and examine these things and see if there's any common or commonalities, common subjects, common themes, are they part of the same activity, that kind of thing. Now this is a pretty straightforward example because I can see that the first 20 or so items are all about music. And we'll notice down here at the bottom that I have a file for music. So it's entirely likely that all of those 20 or so items belong in the music file. So let's start there. We're going to use the batch forms this time. So these are items, so I'm going to use the enter edit item lists batch form. And we're going to search for these things, and we're going to use this common prompt up here as a search prompt. Let me go back and copy and paste again. I just want to make sure I'm going to do this right. So I know that these are all they fall right now directly underneath the full. So we're going to take that and then use that to search. So what this does is it brings back all of the items that are directly underneath that. And I've got all these tests and music and they're intermingled, but I can always sort by title. Or I can sort by date too, but in this case title is what I want. So to select these first 20 or so, I'm going to tick off the first one, move down to the last one, hold down the Shift button, and then click the last one. It's an easy way to select a whole lot at one time. I'll take them and they're going to populate my form. So now all I need to do is change this to the correct file. I think that's what it was called. We'll find out. Oh, good. Sometimes it takes a few times to search for the right thing, or I could have gone back and copied and pasted from our main search page. And I'm going to save these now that they've been reconnected to the right place. So let's find our public search again. Let's redo that search at the top. It still looks like a bit of a mess, but it's a lot shorter. And when we open up our series and we open up our music file, look at that. We have a real hierarchy happening now. This is good. So we've been chipping away at this thing, and I think we're actually almost done. So the last thing we've got here are about 20 items. They're all called webinar test item tests. And well, we have a file called exams. If we open up that file, we'll see we have similar titled items, also called webinar test item tests. I think it's pretty obvious that all of these items should probably be in that file. So we're going to go back to our batch form. We're going to search for our full again, because that's where they currently live. And we want all of the results this time. These are all tests. And we're going to change the forms part of webinar test exams. Choose the correct file to be our new upper level, and save. Let's go back and look at this one more time. Oops, wrong button. Webinar test. Well, let's redo this search. There we go. So when I open this up, I have my one series. My one series breaks into 2 files, and each of my files, you can see by hovering over, will break into a number of items. This is exactly the way I want it to look. I know this was a really simple example, but I think that gives you a good idea of how you can go about doing these things. If you have things that are a quite flat structure, take a look at all of those lower levels, all of the files and items you have, and try to figure out, where are they similar? What activities might have produced these things? So then you can find some series and files, some middle levels, and insert them into your hierarchy. You might need to create that level first, like maybe if this had been completely flat and I just had a webinar test file. It broke down into 20 or 30 items with no series or files, then I'd have to go back and create that series level description first using the single entry web form, and maybe a file or two using either the batch form or the single entry forms too. And then I can come back and I can search for all of them, all of those items using that batch form, and just change the upper level to my new series or my new file. You just keep chipping away at it until everything is nicely put away. Okay, so let's go back and do a review. So we talked about the hierarchy. What is the hierarchy? What types of levels should you have? And like I said, I know not every set of archival materials will fall nicely into this structure, but you should try anyway to aim for a full collection, something at a top level, and then break those down into activities. Those are your series, and then your series will break down into either files or, and then maybe some items after that. What you're just really looking forward for is some way to organize things into a structure. And these were some of the examples we looked at. So for arrangement, we talked about how you should go from the general to the specific. So you start with the whole of your records first, and then group them into your different series and activities, and then keep breaking them down from there. Provenance means that you need to keep that one curator's records together. Don't mix them with somebody else's. And keep them all in the original order if possible, because that original order is what makes those records what they are. It's what gives them meaning. For description, you also want to proceed from the general to the specific. It should reflect the arrangement. And we also talked about physical versus intellectual control. So even if you do need to physically separate some of your archival items from each other, the intellectual control via the arrangement or the description means that you haven't lost any of that contextual meaning. And then we did a demonstration, and I showed you some easy ways to clean up a mess, or insert some hierarchical structure into your records. And we use the batch form to do that. It's a really easy way to do it. You use your forms part of, you fill in the current top level, and then you push the search button and pull back all of the records that you want to change. They'll populate this form in the spreadsheet area, and then you go back and change the forms part of to be the new upper level that they should go under. If you have any questions on anything you've heard today, if you want some help or advice on how to go about organizing your own records, please give me a call. And I really hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you.